Hi, I'm Tiffany.
And I'm Rihanna, and welcome back to Fresh Off the Bro.
Fresh Off the Broke is about personal experiences growing up Asian American in a predominantly white community, Asian media, and Asian pop culture in general. Race has always been a sensitive topic. Every day, there are debates over race. With our podcast, we intend to shed light on the experiences of first-generation Asian immigrants, not put them on a pedestal.
We understand that race isn't everything, but there should be an acknowledgement of people of color, the knowledge gap, and the racial divide that will ideally be broken. Now that that's out of the way, let's get into the episode. Today, we will be discussing what it means to be an obedient kid.
Ooh,
Yes,
heavy topic.
very.
Yeah. Now, the reason why we chose to do this episode, or why obedience? Well, obedience is a pretty big topic that gets brought up a lot by Asian kids and parents, especially the parents. There's this very big emphasis on being a good child and listening to your parents in a way that exists universally, but particularly for Asians, obedience is really hammered in pretty strongly. And how obedient you are can turn into a measure of your value. Or it just defines you as a child. Like, if you're obedient, then you're a good child. You're like the ideal child. But obedience and complying with something isn't always a good thing, right? Because, for instance, the parent could want them to do something bad, or the parent is it's making them do something that they don't want to do, or they're uncomfortable with, but then obedient, right? And so it's huge in Asian culture norms, and there's lots of family pressures, in case you haven't noticed. And we figured that this would be a good episode just because, well, like last time, school started and obedience is often tied with school. The good kid studies well, the one that people get compared to, that cousin or that sibling that people get compared to.
The ideal.
They listen to their parents. They do well in school. They do this, that, and the other thing, and you can I'm sure you can fill those blanks on your own.
Yeah.
And if you can't, well, this episode, it's also for you. We'll talk about what makes an obedient kid and the background of all this.
So, to dive right in, what exactly do we mean by an obedient kid? So, first of all, we are using the term kid just because of the importance of family in the idea of obedience within Asian culture. And also, we've all been a kid. We've all experienced this, I'm sure. And if you haven't, hey, you've gone through something different. That's cool. But again, obedience by definition is compliance with an order, request, or law or submission to another's authority. And again, in this context, authority refers to a parent or a guardian, or even in a larger family context, authority could just mean an older person in the family, an aunt, uncle, grandparent, anybody, just basically anyone older. Because in Asian culture, age also has a very, very big role in respect. So the older you are, the more respect you get. If you let's say you are a young adult, so you obviously have older aunts and uncles, parents, grandparents ahead of you, so they get your respect. But the kids younger than you, maybe your younger cousins or sisters or brothers, they respect you as well. So that's how the dynamics work.
As Brianna was saying, family values, while large in many other cultures, is a huge thing in Asian culture.
Mhm,
There's the family first mentality, and you are expected to kind of follow them no matter what,
mhm,
in the way that they say, like, blood is thicker than water,
mhm,
stuff like that. And a huge, like a term that's often thrown around when we talk about obedience, respecting your family, following them, pursuing their wishes, like fulfilling their wishes.
mhm,
It's filial piety. And if you don't know what that means, filial piety is the reverence for parents considered in Chinese ethics the prime virtue and the basis of all right human relations. And so
mm,
that sounds pretty complicated, right? Like I just said a bunch of words. So filial piety is basically talking about like this concept or this idea that like the younger generation or like the child the existence is kind of like to serve the parent.
mm,
And like to serve them can mean many things. It could be helping them when they're old. It could be doing what they wish for them to do in their career
mhm,
or just like fulfilling their wishes. I've said that a few times, but like what they want is what you have
mhm,
to do.
mhm.
And you're doing it because like they're your parent and you're their child. And so you have to serve them. You have to fulfill what they want. You have to listen. You
Yeah.
just have to. And it's pretty interesting because so like I was saying, I it kind of like came from like Chinese ethics. And the characters, we'll throw it up on the screen, kind of it has a very visual because the Chinese like written language is very visual and there's because it started off as drawing. When you look at the characters, you can break them up and then you like find out like what this half of it and what this half of it represents. And so the top half of the first word, xiao or hao, uh, illustrates the term's meaning because what happened is so the top half of the first character is part of the character for old, like old age. And
Mhm,
then the bottom part of the first character is the second character in son. And so
mhm,
you have the father, which is what you're assuming just because like male-centered
mhm,
history and culture. So you have the father and then you have the son underneath. And so the son being below the father is like a very literal and visual representation of this
mm,
relationship because the older person is being like literally supported or carried by that son. And so it's like a weight or like a burden on their back. And as I was saying about how filial piety is kind of rooted in Chinese culture, it's also one of the biggest aspects of it. I mean, growing up, uh, I don't know how to tell this without it sounding very sad,
mhm.
but so oh, that's never a good
The
way to
whole
open something.
podcast.
It's never a good way to open something. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, because obedience is always a big part of my life,
Mhm,
and in Cantonese and in Mandarin, obedience or like a term for someone that like a good like someone that listens is guai. Like you are obedient, like you do what you're told.
mhm,
And so growing up, like I cared a lot about that
mm,
because I was told to care a lot about it. And
mhm,
every day after when I would come home with my mom, so it could be after school or
mhm.
after going out, I would ask her, like, was I good today?
Oh, ugh, flashbacks.
Yeah. And, I would be super happy if she said yes. And then, like, obviously, like, you know how I felt if she said no.
Mhm,
And even on the days where we had a bad day, like, say I we got into a fight or I don't know, I cried or something, I would still ask just
Man.
in a I don't know,
Yeah.
I guess in a like hoping or maybe I just needed to hear that I wasn't. I don't know.
Yeah.
I we're not therapists, and
Yeah.
if you are, maybe don't talk to me about it right now.
Yeah.
I can't pay you for that.
Yeah. This time we don't want you to comment about that. Please don't.
hmm And so every day I would ask. I don't remember when I stopped doing it, but I would always ask. It's like, was I good today? Was I quiet? And looking back at it as like an older person, it's sad to think about just because like why does
Mhm.
that matter to me so much? And the thing is,
Mhm.
uh me being like me listening to my parent like you know, that's not to say that children should just completely defy
Of course,
and
yeah.
just like protest against their parents.
Yeah.
But there's just this super heavy weight and like family pressure of just
Mhm.
always listening. And the thing is, sometimes children are going to disagree. And whether or not they're right to disagree, it shouldn't be something where they're just like immediately punished and then
Mhm.
immediately made to feel like a criminal in some way,
Mhm.
right? Because children don't understand life.
Yeah.
They don't understand relationships, whether that's like family or friendships or whatever, right?
Mhm.
And so you can't, you have to teach them in a way where, I don't know, like just be a little compassionate, like
Yeah.
not to, it sounds like I'm just like, what's the word? I don't know. But it sounds like I'm just like ranting about Asian culture. But like when it comes to this like filial piety thing, I have really strong feelings about filial piety. Just it's something that like
Period.
I resented for a long time
Mhm.
because there's nothing wrong with taking care of your family and respecting them or something. But when it becomes this like a thing that is used to manipulate you or kind of to take advantage of you,
Mhm.
like holding it against your head, right? That's
Mhm.
really messed up.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Just to note, the idea or concept of like family first is a pretty like connecting string in all Asian cultures. But not every place has an like a term for it. But again, it's very, very prominent in Asian culture specifically. I mean, I know in Filipino and like Philippine tradition, there's no like term for it that I know of. So please correct me if I'm wrong. But
Someone's immediately going to the comment section and being like, Rihanna,
yeah,
nope.
I mean, thank you for telling me if that's the case. But all like the exact same ideas are prominent, like are brought forth in Filipino culture. And just like an example of it. So, family first mentality of the obedient child. If a mom and a daughter in law did not get along, filial piety demanded that a man should get rid of his wife in order to please his mother. He could always get another wife, but he would only have one mother.
Oh yeah, that's something
Hmm.
too for I mean, I don't know if I've ever seen it written, which doesn't necessarily mean it hasn't been written, but that's definitely something that I have heard of before.
Hmm. Just the idea of even though you want her to be part of the family, she doesn't get along with like the OG family. So
Mhm.
kick her out because
Mhm.
mother said so. And all honestly, that gets a little Freudian, and I don't want to get into. It makes me feel very uncomfortable. Um,
Yeah.
but again, it happens. Like That's a thing. And this happens. I know some people are probably listening and being like, how could a man, like a grown man getting married, listen to his mom like that and throw away his whole life? Well, not not actually, but this happens. And this is very important in family dynamics, especially like more traditional or like old school type families. Very, very important.
And it's interesting because if you break it down even further, the male's parents, like in a what you were saying about like the marriage of
Mhm.
like between a man and a woman, the
Mhm.
male's parents take priority over
Mhm.
the
The girl's
females.
parents,
Yeah.
yeah. Which again makes sense considering everything.
hmm So, Rihanna, you were just kind of talking about how filial piety or just like obedience shows up and or doesn't show up
Mhm.
in Filipino culture. How have you seen it in like your own life, or what has your relationship or like view on obedience been?
Good question. Um,
Pass.
well, yeah, I think I'll pass. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this episode. No. So, first and foremost, I would like to say that I think overall, and just very, very generally, I have a pretty good relationship with my family. Obviously, there are cracks in the road, some very, very big ones, but we just pretend that they're not there. So, performatively, it's fine. Um, I guess. And also, the family that I'm close with, I mean, close with because of like just due to physical closeness, like just they're closer to me. Like some of the family is in Asia, so you know, um, that family is very, very big. I have a big family, lots of uncles, aunties, cousins, you name it, all of that. And also, I am in my like in the layer of the family tree of all the aunties and uncles' kids, I am the youngest. So I was talking about respect earlier. I have the
hmm
least amount of respect essentially because I am I'm at the bottom of the food chain to the
Uh-huh.
point where some of my cousins' kids are older than me.
I
So
see.
I'm pretty down there. And when I was younger, especially when I was younger, I could really feel that just due to everyone being older than me and me being the youngest cousin and not the youngest like cousin's kid. So it was just like this weird, I think the biggest age gap between me and the second youngest cousin is like 10 years, more than 10 years. So that's how it felt. And as we all know, I am at, or I guess I think in previous podcasts I was saying I used to be a dancer, but I guess I am a dancer now because I've got back into it kind of. But when I was younger, I used to competitively dance, and the obedience thing came into play like crazy with that because it was always, oh, Rihanna does this outside of school. She danced competitively. Show them. And I just had to. If they wanted me to perform for a birthday party, I had to. If they wanted me to
hmm
perform just out of nowhere, I had to. And I really, really, really hated it.
How
Like
would they, where was there even a space for you to perform?
no, I've been put into many dangerous situations because of that. And obviously, I like know not to do certain things.
hmm
But it's just like it's also just degrading for them to be like, do this, and then we're gonna give you a meter squared of
Dance, monkey,
space.
dance.
Exactly. That's exactly what it felt like. Um, and for the longest time, I just do it because what else could I do? Like And if I even showed the smallest hint of being like, I don't want to, or like there's no space, it was always like, this is your family. Like, how dare you? Why are you acting like this? You know how much money we pay for you to do that, just very
Yeah.
typical conversation and stuff
Very
like that.
familiar.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never taken dance, but very familiar
But yeah,
feeling.
so there was a lot of that, and obviously there were stuff like that happened in different contexts, but I think that was like the main one. And up to a certain point, obviously, like you said, like you don't know when you stopped asking your mom. I don't know when I stopped, like when I started flat out just refusing. I think I
Mm-hmm.
was like probably 16 or 17, which is way too old in my opinion.
Oh, dang.
Um, but like it was a breaking point. It was pretty bad because it was all of a sudden every like obviously I had to get through my parents first. And then after that, I had to go through every single aunt and uncle, which is a lot, and go through the same conversation of why aren't you doing this anymore? Why not? Like, why don't you want to? Like, you know how much your mom pays for you? You know how much your dad pays? Yes, just that conversation, but times like 20, given the family that I have.
Uh-huh.
So that's how I perceived it. And that being said, like I would like to give myself credit. I was a very obedient child. There I could
I
probably
believe
count.
that.
Yeah, I mean, we're very similar in that aspect, but I
Yeah,
could probably count on my hand how many times I acted up on one
yeah,
hand.
same. If there's one, I don't know if I want to say I take pride in it, but if there's one thing I will not let you fight me on, is how obedient of a child I was.
Uh-huh.
Because I would
Period.
always be told
Hmm.
that. And oh, this is something I didn't mention earlier, but you could probably assume it's because obedience is such a big deal and like being told to be obedient is a big deal. Being called obedient by other people, being like, wow, you have such an obedient child, was a top tier compliment.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh God.
And I would be told that and be like, wow, your daughter is so obedient or this and that. And I still get that.
Hmm.
I
Same.
still do. Uh, and it bothers me.
Yeah,
I don't like being called obedient because
for
it just
sure.
has other implications, right?
Yeah. Obviously, like growing up and hearing that, it was always like, yeah, I am. Like I'm a good kid. Because obviously
Yeah,
to you,
I'm good.
yeah, obedience and just being a quality individual, that was the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it was very, very good to hear that. But now, whenever I hear someone say that about a child, it like physically disgusts me. Like it's disgusting. Don't say that. That's gross.
Mm-hmm.
Ugh. Why are we measuring children's worth based on obedience? That's
Yeah.
terrible.
Yeah. And there's just like lasting terrible mental
Effects.
effect,
Uh-huh.
like emotional effect.
Hmm.
It messes with the way that you deal with your relationships.
Hmm.
Uh,
That's a big
and
one.
I've seen like some people have talked about how they kind of became people pleasers for that
Hmm.
because it's kind of like being obedient, I guess,
It
if you think
is.
about it.
Yeah, for sure.
Because you're changing yourself to fit other people's needs and
Hmm.
then not thinking about your needs.
And you're just listening to them without like a second thought, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think it's so important for kids to be disobedient too. Like, obviously, you don't want a child that just like defies you. That's a whole like other issue. But kids need to disobey at some point because how are they going to learn anything if they just sit there? Like, how are they going to be able to create decisions for themselves or just think by themselves in a way that will set them up for success in life if you just tell a kid, like, if someone's older than you And especially if someone older than you in the family tells you to do something, you just listen to them. Like that's terrible. And that has gone wrong so many times.
Mhm. One thing that comes up when talking about obedience, especially as of recent years, is this joke or just the idea of throwing your parents in a nursing home or like an old age home.
Hmm.
And the reason why I say joke is because just like in the past few years, there have been a few memes about it, and not necessarily memes and then just like LOL going to throw my parents in a nursing home. It's more, for instance, parent colon like berates child blah blah blah, like child opens mouth, parents like berate them, and
Hmm.
then like parents like why are you not talking to us,
Hmm.
and like it's stuff like that that causes or that is shown in those like nursing home memes per se.
Hmm.
And a lot of this, I mean, you can probably guess, but it's just talking about like the, because we were talking about lasting emotional effects and just like the damage that happens to kids that grow up under the severe pressure of having to be like this super obedient, super good kid. I mean, like Rihanna and I were saying, like, oh, like looking back, like I mean, I stand by the fact that I was a good kid. It's like we're still kind of
Hmm.
talking about it at this, like,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Which is sad, but also like you can see. I mean, this is a clear example.
Mm-hmm.
Can't get more obvious than this, guys.
Mm-hmm. And the nursing home joke, or just like the decision to do that, is kind of like cutting off like that unhealthy relationship with your parent,
Hmm.
and not and kind of anti filial piety because you're not taking care of them at their old, because that is like one of the bigger or like highlighted responsibilities on this filial piety, because like I was
Hmm.
saying with the characters that I was talking about, like the older generation is literally being like carried or supported from underneath
Hmm.
by the younger generation.
Just anything in this context, my mom immediately just goes, I can't believe you're gonna dump us in a nursing home. You hate us, you're not gonna take care of us anymore.
Oh
I spent my
gosh.
entire like my life taking care of you and now you just dump me. And it's very, she's not like actually upset, but at the same time, like she said this and done this multiple times to the point where it's like she's obviously trying to instill something in me through a joking manner,
Mm-hmm.
which I just think it's funny. But going along with that, this is kind of bad. But
You think? This is
I
not funny.
no, this one is. Um, I was working at a
Our listeners
camp,
must be so concerned for us.
probably.
I'm
Um,
sorry.
we're okay. I mean, we're not, but like it's fine, you
Yeah,
know?
it's not like LOL, we're traumatized. It's not like that.
No. And especially this story, this is just funny. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, I was working at a
I'm
camp.
gonna get a therapist when I can afford it. I promise.
Yes. Yes.
I
Um,
told Rihanna that so she can
yes.
testify.
Yes. Um, oh, camp. And there was a talent show, and one of the kids who was 4 years old, and she was Asian. Okay, I don't know
Uh-huh.
what type of Asian, but I know she was East Asian.
Okay.
Um, it was a talent show that was basically like you didn't act, it wasn't an actual talent show. It was mainly just each group of kids like did a little dance that they had been working on for the past 2 weeks at the camp. So it wasn't a like actual like sign up and bring in a thing, but this little Asian girl who was 4 years old,
Yes.
who um
The
I'm
emphasis on the
ass
age is scaring me.
yeah, I'm assuming what happened was her parents or guardians saw that there was a scheduled talent show, and they were like, "You have to do this, like, bring this," because she's 4, like, she's probably not like, "Oh, I wanna do this because I wanna show off," especially for the way that she performed, but anyways, she shows up to camp with her violin, and she basically, like, told, like, the older staff members, like, "My mom told me to bring my violin for the talent show, and I have to perform." Um, so it was so cute. She just played, like, "Twinkle Twinkle Little Star" or something, it was so cute. But I was watching with a couple of my coworkers, and one of my coworkers, who is just a very out-of-pocket person, just goes, "You know, I wonder if when this little girl grows older, she'll grow to resent her own mother." And without hesitation, I went, "As a child who was raised like this, yes." And both, like, the people sitting with us were just like, "Oh, haha, wow, wow, I didn't know that about you." And I was laughing, but they were like, "Oh, that's awkward. Anyways, moving on." And I was like, "Come on, guys, laugh. It's funny. Please,
I mean,
joke."
honestly, it's not. I mean, like, it is for us, but
Yeah,
it's not for people in general.
yeah. I was just so surprised that they didn't laugh because when this person said this, he obviously said it as like a rhetorical, kind of funny question in like a
Mhm.
sarcastic way. But then I was like, yeah, the answer is yes, and I know that. So they were just everyone was just like, "Oh, Rihanna, okay. Well, thank you for sharing. Moving on." But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one time, this is not really filial piety related, but one time, in an extracurricular event, someone was saying something about parents saying that they're proud of their children,
Oh God.
and I jokingly said, Your parents do that?" And then some of them turned to look at me and was like, "Tiffany,
It's
are you okay?"
like, what do you think? Don't ask that question when you know the answer.
Yeah, I feel bad for doing that. I'm sorry. I didn't even think that many of them heard me. I kind of just like muttered it. It was just kind of like a joke to myself.
Yeah, it always works out that way.
If any of you are listening and you know who you are, I apologize. I shouldn't have said it. I'm
But it
not,
was still funny.
yeah, I still feel this way, but yeah, I apologize.
Same.
Okay, going back to no, not retirement home, nursing home.
Mhm,
My parents have also kind of done what your mom said, except not really in a joking way.
mhm,
It was just in I mean, a lot of people can probably relate to this. One of the things being like, "Oh, you don't care, blah blah. When I grow old, you're gonna abandon me, blah blah, stuff like that." But
mm,
then after a period of time, because I think I've mentioned this in past episodes, sometimes my parents like to present themselves in a certain way,
mm,
which, because in Asian cultures, face means a lot. Like how people view you from the outside means a lot.
mhm,
And so my parents have this thing where they want to show other people how good of parents that they are,
mhm,
in the sense that they're understanding or they're supportive and this, that, and the other thing.
mhm,
And one of the ways in which they try to prove this to outsiders is by saying that they're okay with being in a nursing home and that that's what they expect
mm,
and that they don't care because they don't want me to have to suffer or have to feel the pressure and
Mm,
stress of taking care of them day to day when I'm older. And they say that on the outside, and they have said this once or twice to me, but I know they don't mean it because they always end up saying these other things
mhm,
later on or even during, uh, where they say, like, I have to do this, or they'll do the whole like guilt tripping thing because they, I don't know, drove me to school when I was in high school or something, you know what
mhm,
I'm saying? Like things like
mhm,
that. And it always sucks because a lot of people have talked about this. Like, you can't leverage over your children that you fed them growing up
mhm,
and that you let them live in your house and that you raised them.
mhm.
You can't really leverage that against them because I mean they never asked to be born.
Yeah. It's also like your responsibility as a parent. Like when you choose to be a parent, you are signing up to do that.
Hmm. And another thing, the the way that Westerners look at nursing homes versus the way that Asians look at uh, Westerning homes, my bad, at nursing homes is drastically different. I mean,
Mhm,
there are Western families that view nursing homes in a abandonment way. That
mhm,
happens for sure. I've heard it. I used to volunteer in nursing homes, so I've like heard it firsthand.
mhm.
Uh, but the way that Asian families view nursing homes, they view it as like the ultimate form of abandonment,
Yeah.
or it's almost like a sign of shame, and
Mhm,
you look down on families where that has happened to them. Like you'll see that those parents are in a nursing home, and then you think very poorly of their children
mhm,
that did that to
mhm,
them.
mhm,
And the thing is, yeah, sometimes like I mean, it happens. Sometimes some children may actually fully abandon their parents
mhm.
that were that they had that well their parents, what I'm basically trying to say is that sometimes there are parents that treat their children well, and then maybe the children are the one that don't treat them well, and then like
Yeah.
throw them away and never talk to them again, and then like the parents feel really sad about that. That
Mhm,
happened.
mhm.
That's not the main focus of what we're talking about, but that happened, and I don't want it to seem like we're saying that never happened. Uh, but it's just not really fair to shame people for not wanting to connect with their families again,
Mhm,
especially if they dealt with what we've been talking about this entire time.
mhm,
Because as you grow older and like you become an adult and you have your own family and stuff that's loving, how often are you going to want to connect with your like I'm saying this for the sake of it being opposites, for your like hateful family,
mhm,
right?
mhm.
Have you ever thought about like the future and I don't know, the possibility of putting your parents in a nursing home?
Um, I probably I mean, I don't really think of it. I don't really like to think of the future because anxiety, but,
Mhm. That's totally
um,
fair.
I probably wouldn't, but not for the reasons you'd think. There's, like, other reasons, but that's a talk for another time. What about you?
Yeah, no problem. For me, I'm definitely gonna do it.
Mm,
That's all. I mean, they're the ones that said they're okay with it and they expect it, so I'm just fulfilling their expectations as an
mm,
obedient child.
period. For the people listening right now, I do wanna say one thing. If you have a good relationship with your family, that's awesome. That's really great, like, we're very happy for you. But if you do not have a good relationship with your family, please do not feel like, don't let people shame you for stating that
Mhm.
and acknowledging that, because part of the obedience issue is like convincing yourself that everything is fine. I think a lot of people um, will judge others when other people say like, "Oh no, like I don't like my family," or "I don't like this parent," or even saying like, "I'm gonna put my parents in a nursing home." A lot of people will judge you for that.
Yeah,
But
they will.
at
Like,
the end of the day, it's like,
mm,
you don't know my family. You don't know my
they'll
situation.
witch hunt you.
Yeah, they fully will. And there, if you hold that sentiment, you are gonna encounter these people a lot. Well, they're gonna shame you for it. And just know, deep down inside, you know you are in the right. You know your own situation. Don't let others like convince you into thinking that you're a bad kid or a bad person for doing that.
Mhm.
That's very important. I just wanted to reiterate that.
Yeah, for sure.
And also, if you find yourself in the actual like family's obedient child position and you really dislike it, please don't hold in your frustration. From personal experience,
I second that.
yeah, like keeping that to yourself to the point where you are about to explode, you cannot hold in that explosion. It is going to come sooner or later. The older you get, the more it's just bubbling up exponentially. You are allowed to stand up for yourself, or just even just tell yourself, I'm not okay with this. Like, this is wrong. I shouldn't be treated like this. I shouldn't have to like respect my parents or family the way that I do. Obviously you should have respect for people in general, but in the case of the obedient child, that's in certain situations very harmful
Mhm. It
and very
shouldn't have
very
to come
bad.
at the cost of your
Your own self,
sanity.
yeah, exactly. So just a word of advice: please let out your frustrations, or at least speak about your frustrations. Do not hold it in.
Mhm.
It's really
And
terrible.
even if you're not necessarily saying it to your parents that you're not okay with it, because it's easier said than done,
Mhm.
support system, like outside
Mhm.
support system,
Mhm.
talking to people. I mean, like, me, Anna and I made this podcast because we would talk to each other in a stairwell
Mhm.
all the time.
And I mean, we are also here to listen. If you do not have anyone to speak to or anyone who would understand,
Mhm.
we are here to listen.
Yeah. We're not trained professionals. We're not social
No,
workers or therapists, but we're fresh off the boat.
we are. And we understand what's going on to a certain extent.
Mhm.
So, again, people are here for you. People do understand what you're going through. And people, you might not even realize that people are going through this, because a whole part of it is just letting it happen and not really voicing how you feel. So you'd be surprised, honestly. But again, people are here for you. We are here for you. If you need to let it out and snap, honestly, you never know how they'll react. Maybe they'll be like, valid.
Rihanna, I don't know.
No, that won't happen. That probably won't happen. But again, don't let that build up in yourself. It's not good.
Mhm. Yeah, I don't know if I never mind, but yeah. Don't bottle it up. I second that part.
Mm,
It never works.
no, it doesn't.
Yeah. You just implode. Or you just kind of stop functioning.
Yeah.
Hmm. And one of the things is just it's always I always get really frustrated with this topic, and I don't like talking about it with people.
Mm,
Especially, and I think, but I mean, partially because it's never really the right people, because uh, lots of Westerners in my like I grew up in a like near a white school, and so they
mhm,
would never get it.
mhm,
And then I would never talk about it with them. With why would I? Like that was how I was thinking. Because even if the slightest thing came up, like certain things that they would say, like I could never relate to, right?
mhm,
And then I could never talk about this with, for instance, like Asian adults. And I mean Asian adults, like Asian family friends or whatever, because they're just thinking, well, why wouldn't you be obedient? And why wouldn't
mhm,
you like be a good kid? Because when you use those types of terms, it's turning it into something else, right?
mhm,
Because like good kid, okay, well, like what defines a good kid? Like
mhm.
if I if I let you, I don't know, wipe your shoes with my clothes because you told me to. That's not something that happened, by the way. I just made that up in my head. Uh, does that make me an obedient kid? Because you like asked or like I had to do it. It just becomes this like super frustrating conversation about like entitlement, and
Mhm,
then uh being forced to forgive because they're family.
mm,
And it's okay. Like some people don't deserve forgiveness. Like I'm not saying I don't support the whole like moving on
mhm,
for your sake, and so you're not always in the past.
mhm,
But not everyone deserves to be forgiven,
mhm.
even if they are your parent. Like no contact is an option.
It is.
And it's okay if you do that. Like there's
Mhm,
people, I mean, the people that criticize it are the people that don't get it, right? But like
mhm,
you have to understand it's such a difficult decision to make because
mhm,
you're basically just blocking out your family
mhm,
and then you just don't have them anymore, right?
mhm.
It's not for fun.
No.
It's not fun.
And especially if you grew up with the mentality of family first, it can be very, very like depressing just to even think
Mhm.
about it.
Mhm.
But again, if it's unhealthy, you need to maybe reevaluate your mindset and think about the good things that can come out of cutting ties. If you listened this far and are feeling a little down in the dumps, just thinking of this, just know we are sending you the biggest hug
Mhm.
ever.
Yes, this I mean, from the start, we were saying like, oh, this is kind of a heavy topic, and it is. It's a little difficult to talk about, and it's something
Mhm,
we've had this episode in like written down for a while,
mhm.
and it's always kind of tough to talk about or to. I don't want to
Approach.
use the word organize, but
Mhm.
structure,
Yeah.
just because this could be something that goes on for 10 hours, honestly.
Mm.
Even just one of these segments, for instance, the nursing home thing, that could be its own episode.
Yeah, could.
And I mean, like Rihanna said, like we're sending you the biggest hug.
Mhm.
I'm gonna give myself a hug. You can give yourself a hug too.
Okay.
Listen, yeah.
Hugs for everyone. If you want
Yeah,
one, that is.
of course. No unsolicited hug.
No. Ew.
Mhm. Well, hugs aside, thank you so much for tuning in today. We always appreciate your presence, whether for the first time or for the second or for the 65th.
I thought you were gonna start counting to 65.
Oh, you mean like or the third or the
Yeah.
fourth or the fifth or the sixth or the seventh? Like that birthday song.
Yeah,
You know, like are you one? Are you two? Are you three? Are you
till
four? Are you
65.
five? Are you six? Are you seven? Are you eight?
Okay,
I'm already
well,
getting tired of this. When did we stop doing that?
probably after like 15.
That's already long enough. You know what I
It
mean? Like,
is.
are you 10? Are you 11? Are you 12? Are you 13? Like, it's just so. At one point, it just gets a little sad.
Yeah,
Like, won't stop.
like please.
Not that this is anything, or like, we don't mean that in like a aging way. We just mean that in like a you just keep singing the thing and it just
You're
won't
just
end.
waiting to be like,
Hmm.
stop.
Yeah, and they're like, woo. Anyways, birthday song aside, like we've been saying, feel free to leave a comment if you think we left anything out or if you have anything to say about filial piety, because
Mhm.
it's complicated, you know? It's not inherently wrong to support your parent.
Mhm.
It's not inherently wrong or evil or manipulative or anything like that.
Mhm.
And so we'd love to hear your experience with it, your thoughts on it. Have you studied Chinese ethics? Tell us about it.
Mhm.
I'd like to hear about that. Can you imagine majoring in Chinese ethics?
That'd be sick.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. Let us know if you do. Oh, I also just want to know if it was just me that asked if I was good today. I just want to know because I don't know where I got that idea from. And I don't know when I started doing that. I mean, I also said I don't know when I stopped. I just don't know where it came from. And I want to know, is there anyone else out there that asks that question every day?
Yeah.
Either way, either answer I'm getting, yes, no, it's gonna be sad, it's okay. I
Yeah.
stopped doing it. I don't care anymore.
You
I
should get a
honestly
comment that's like, I still do it.
could maybe tell us, actually, well, I was gonna say maybe tell us how old you are, but at the same time, I don't want you guys
Yeah, maybe don't do that.
sharing private information on the internet like that. Just for people to see, so just say whether, you know, if you actually are what Rihanna said, you did it and you still do it, let us know.
Yeah.
Tell us why.
Yeah. Maybe reevaluate.
Okay.
I mean, maybe there's a reason. Let us know the reason.
Yeah. Maybe they just didn't know to stop.
Yeah. just habit at this point. Okay, well, anyways, if you guys like this episode and want to stay connected with us, check out our website in the description. It contains links to our streaming platforms such as Spotify, Anchor, Apple Podcasts, and more. Follow us for more behind-the-scenes content, announcements, and other random things we decide to put on there.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.